Now, we should also note that attacks are not purely technical. So when systems are compromised, the compromise doesn't happen because of just a technical failure, because security is a social technical system. People are part of the system. So if somebody fails in conducting their duty, then they would cause a failure that would happen in the system, just like somebody sharing their password, for example. And here are a few examples. For instance, one of the data centers in Iceland that was used for cryptocurrency mining and various cryptocurrency operations was actually compromised in 2018. The compromise was not a technical one. Essentially, the criminals simply drove into that data center and stole the physical machines. So this is not typically a cyber attack. It's an attack on the systems by simply physically stealing the system. So if you don't secure the physical environment, you basically have a gap. So security is physical, social, technical, and physical as well. Back here in Egypt, a former student sent me this picture. This is kind of a computer that's actually like an ATM machine, but it's really a banking kiosk. This innocent child finds it and it's badly configured, and the innocent child just uses it to use paintbrush or something like it. Of course, lucky for the bankers, because had a malicious person found it, they might be able to probe into the internals of the network. So again, the failure here is a hybrid technical human failure, bad administration, bad defaults, and so forth. Brings up the total question of dependability and trust. And over time, we've actually tried to come up with a number of principles to address those ideas. How do we build better systems? And the fundamental ideas have been around as early as 1975. Salter and Schroeder had laid down the foundation. They've been visited many times since then and renewed and revisited. And if you look at the list, I won't go over each and every item, but if you look at the list, they actually address many technical issues that we all know are pretty relevant, but some of them are not purely technical issues. So for example, number 4, the question of open design is really a call for our ability to scrutinize systems. And this is actually a really old concept that has withstood the test of time. So 19th century Kirchhoff and Claude Shannon in the mid-20th century coined the concept that the so-called the enemy knows the system. In other words, hiding the details of your system is not really sufficient to guarantee security. But you must complement it with oversight, scrutiny, and similar activities to make sure that things are done correctly and that you don't kind of misplace your trust to entities that either are incompetent, malicious, or a hybrid of both. And just like we do in society in many walks of life, we typically have separation between those that perform a task and those that audit the task, just to get this, avoid this so-called moral hazard. And other issues are related to human acceptability of those notions. And actually, similar concepts were put into play by the Computing Research Association way back in 2003. They set up 4 challenges, in theory, then to be solved within 10 years, so by 2013. Obviously, they haven't been solved yet. The first one is to learn from economics. To learn risk management from economics and to be able to build systems that are resilient to failure. And this actually ushered the field of so-called security economics, which isn't just about making security cost effective, but rather about learning from economics, microeconomics in particular, to study incentives, markets, and so forth, because those create the holistic picture for the social technical system. Dealing with epidemics, things like malware, viruses, denial of service attacks. Most of us think that machine learning and AI will play a pivotal role here. We're not there yet, but hopefully we'll be there. The engineering challenge, which is the software and system engineering challenge, building dependable systems that society can rely on for important tasks. So financial transactions, medical applications, autonomous vehicles, and so forth. Because security is not just security now; it's also safety as well. And finally, the human challenge, which is basically building systems that non-specialized folks can understand the implications of without necessarily having a degree in computer science or engineering or a related field. And if you compare that with other technologies we're using, for example, most of us drive a car, and most of us don't understand the full details of the internal combustion engine or the electrical engine or whichever mechanism is being used, but yet we're still able to drive cars reasonably effectively. We're not at the same level with computing, and perhaps because computing is not embedded in the physical world we understand, but is a bit of a different context. But still, we still have to endeavor to develop technologies in such a way that humans are able to make more informed decisions. And back to the theme of security economics, I'm just showing two slides here. The first one is from Ross Anderson, famous security engineering professor at Cambridge University, and he's actually contrasting this issue of incentive. Essentially, if we don't all have incentives to actually build proper security, then we might not be doing the right job. And here he offers a contrast between the interest of the end user and the interest of a technology vendor. He suggests to us that the interest of the end user might be to protect their data and information from some criminal, cyber criminal, or evil hacker. On the other hand, the vendor is likely more interested in growing their market, increasing their profit, and crushing the competition. So basically, in such a situation, our incentives are not aligned, and therefore the vendor might perform actions that would harm the user. And of course, part of the answer there lies in oversight and regulation and having effective liabilities. And we've seen that a little bit in the European Union with a newish kind of regulation for privacy protection, essentially causing big firms like Google, Facebook, and the likes to actually alter how they deal with user data, especially those residing in the European the opportunity, which means that essentially those who are upstream from us technology-wise have the ability to compromise our systems. And here I quote the very famous Ken Thompson, and this was part of his Turing Award acceptance speech. It was way back in 1984, a very telling year for those of you who are George Orwell fans. But anyway, in that speech, he was actually, he titled it Reflections on Trusting Trust. So he was bringing to question the issue about trusting technology created by others. And I would extend that by questioning technology created by others that we have no ability to scrutinize and assess for ourselves. And he didn't actually do that, but he made this humorous and very informative example. He was saying, you know what, I created the Unix system, I'm getting the Turing Award, but if somebody gets a Unix-based machine, they can configure it to prevent me from logging in because my username and password will not be in the database. So what I'm going to do is create a backdoor, essentially in the login.c program, an if statement. So something like if username is Ken Thompson, just let me in or don't ask for a password. Then he figured out that if people scrutinize the source code, they'll actually be able to find this if statement and delete it. So he decided to change the compiler, the program that converts source code into runnable machine code. So now he has this backdoor in the compiler and essentially fixes it so that if the compiler is compiling login.c or another compiler for that matter, they introduce this backdoor in it. And now he's able to delete all the source code and just leave the running compiler. So anybody who uses the compiler from here into the future will be reintroducing this backdoor into the system again. Again, it's an interesting, humorous story, but it brings back an important lesson. Without scrutiny, oversight, trust becomes a very tricky proposition. Bringing this home in a more serious and massive way in 2013 was Edward Snowden, who revealed a massive surveillance program run by governments around the world. His story still remains controversial, but essentially he revealed that many of the technology companies we're using today are part of government programs that allow them to surveil, eavesdrop on our interactions and report them to governments. Personally, I don't necessarily blame the companies. I would have hoped it would have been a different outcome, but essentially they are complying with some legal requirement. I guess the question becomes, or the issue becomes on us in a way, what are we willing to do about this? Maybe we should take a move like the European Union to add extra privacy right, extra scrutiny for those perhaps residing in Africa. And maybe it's part of our mandate to have some better oversight of such systems. Finally, I'm taking too much time, so let me just try to draw some final conclusions. I hope you agree with me that security is social, technical, and physical. So it's affected by technology, the human operators and actors, and the physical ecosystem. The risk and trust management are actually key. So if we're considering insider threats, we can generalize it into, who do we trust? And by who, we might be referring to individual human actors, or might be referring to pieces of technology, just like the SolarWinds or RSA technology that we're using, or indeed the technology revealed by Edward Snowden that actually is part of those government programs. Also, back to the theme of security economics, regulation and legal oversight has created different incentives and has helped change and improve the security environment. So for example, when the card industry introduced the PCI DSS, we've seen an improvement in essentially the fraud happening, because now relying parties have to comply with a certain standard. The same is true in many parts around the world. For example, here in Egypt, the central bank has set rules for internet banking. And once that happened, we've seen a great improvement in the internet banking applications offered locally. And then the same generalizes to many different industries. For example, lots of smart grid, power grid companies are now trying to regulate because they're obviously all connected to cyberspace as well. And attacks against those pieces of infrastructure, critical infrastructure, can be quite devastating. Also, we all need to work more on AI, machine learning, and analytics. I don't think it's a silver bullet that will solve each and every problem, but it's certainly part of the future solution. And then as a perspective at perhaps a higher level, we all know that dealing with raw material versus dealing with processed material, there's a big difference. We've all had that experience in our part of the world, cotton, oil, and now data. Raw material versus processed information. Obviously, we're much better off in many ways if we're dealing at the processed level, not dealing with the raw material level. And finally, I think the path to all of that is that we must have more comprehensive research and development programs that enable us to build the knowledge and know-how to scrutinize and create technologies that are trustworthy enough and fit enough for our purpose. Thank you all very much, and sorry for exceeding my time. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Prof. It was very enticing and very good presentation.
Thank you.
And I believe this becomes an open way for us to now start addressing or going directly to the panel discussion. And on my panel discussion, I'm expecting to have you again that we'll be able to discuss further on this particular agenda of threats from within and the story of how we can protect our identity, and also not only protecting our identity, but also be able to address the issue that coming at post-COVID issues, or how we can solve the challenges in a modern remote access in the post-COVID world. On my panel discussion, I'm very sure Ms. Baratang Mia, you are with me. And also we have Prof. Sherif Al-Kassas, and also Tola, I believe you are with us. Segbesan. Tola, are you there? Okay. I believe Tola maybe will be Dada. Is Tola around? I believe Tola, because he was also feeling not very good, but I believe now he can.
It's not Tola is not on the list. I think he's not online.
Yes, he was not feeling good. He was sick the past 2-3 days, and also Fidel from Safaricom, we just spoke today. She was also not feeling very good, but not a problem. Let us get into our panel discussion. We are going to address several issues related to the threats from within, the post-COVID era. How are we going to get along with it, and few other things that comes along with the challenges, and how we can combat those challenges. And to start with, I want to ask one question, or start my question to Ms. Maya. I want to ask you one little question, starting from you, Ms. Mia. And I want to ask you the unique risk created within today's remote workforce. What are the risks that have been created within today's remote workforce? If you can help share a few ideas on the agenda.
So as you said, I'm Ms. Baratang Mia from South Africa. So the work that I do focuses a lot on women and technology. And just to answer your question, I think what happened was with corporates, they weren't ready for the digital workforce. So what COVID did, it just pushed all of us into starting having our people working remotely. People used to work from anywhere in the world, but remote work as the corporate taking the whole identity of the organization and trust individuals outside the organizations. Because now, I just have to clarify that in the past, most companies will have an IT department. An IT department, that's where security, everything was held. Now, all of a sudden, when you start having people working remotely, you have to take the organizational infrastructure and take it outside and trust that your employees will be able to know that part of security of the organization is in their hands. And I think that comes with a different kind of challenges for organizations to say, if I'm going to have remote workers, I need to make sure that they know what cyber attacks are out there, how decision-making, the level of tech is being made, how is it going to affect them? Prof talked about risk management, that risk and trust between corporates on privacy of information that they're holding in their hands, and that information going to that corporate information, how does one function with that? And that intersection between cyber security and usability of an employee. So an employee is still a user. They still need a PIN, the password, the verification, so that they can enter the corporate and do the work. But at the same time, the corporate has to protect itself and protect an employee. And I think that became a big thing because that's not what organizations were prepared for COVID. They were prepared for internal work being protected internally in their systems. I would just say that I think for employees, they need a high degree of assurance that whatever they are giving out there as their data is also protected now that we're speaking about remote work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mia from South Africa. It actually now, not only that, but we have seen now the massive number of endpoints are needed to be protected. We have a lot of endpoints now we have to protect. We do also have a lot of problem when it comes to insider threats. You remember, for example, now we are on Zoom, and we can see most of us, we don't wear our earphones. So people that can eavesdrop our interesting and very sensitive information via Zoom and so on. So we have this, one of the very challenging things in our current world where we're struggling with a remote workforce. But now let me go to Prof. Sheriff El-Kassas. How do we mitigate risk that are posed by these malicious and unintentional insider threats? Do you have any idea or any thoughts that you want to share with us of what are the things that we can put in place so that we can be able to protect our organizations when it comes to these threats from within? Over to you.
Thank you, and thank you to fellow panelists for bringing up such important points as well. First I'd like to start from something Ms. Mia had actually alluded to, which is essentially in a traditional security and IT infrastructure, we are building our system out of compartments, and those compartments represent some sort of trust zone. So we have a server room, we have a room for managers, offices, and so forth, and we build our trust around those partitions. Obviously, with, like Ms. Mia has said, with this explosion and what you have also alluded to, with this explosion of those massive numbers of devices, we have to think about it in a slightly different way, because now we're not in different compartments, we're essentially in a meshed connected world. And here we see, I wouldn't say new, but kind of a renewed concept called zero trust architectures or zero trust designs. Essentially, we're not going to be able to build trust based on zoning or compartments because there are no such zones or compartments. But instead, we're going to have to build trust based on each and every interaction. So when device A talks to device B, or user Alice talks to user Bob, we can't make an assumption about their identity, their eligibility, and so forth without proper authentication authorization. And this has to be carried out down into each individual transaction as well. So for instance, just like with a banking transaction, the transaction has to be signed and encrypted, for example, to make sure that it comes from a trusted source that's authorized and that it remains confidential. And we can no longer rely simply on trust based on zone or relation. The bigger cost of this is that this applies also to technology and providers and vendors. We have to have certification programs for such entities. Of course, this is difficult and expensive to do. It happens in many areas of work that are really critical. So you're going to, if you look at the defense industry, medical industry, if you look at many government applications, you're going to see that much of the systems used, many of the systems used there have to go through scrutiny and certification programs. But I think we need to extend this to other walks in life because, again, security and dependability are becoming not just an issue of protecting assets, important as it is, but also protecting critical things like safety. You know, self-driving cars, even non-self-driving cars are now have now become hackable machines, so to speak. I hope that addresses your point. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for your good explanation. Actually, one thing that we have seen currently is that people are struggling to understand how do we secure our digital identity when it comes to online, when we go through this, how do we call it, this digital era, where now people are trying to work from remote, working from everywhere, and we have a lot of information that are we are pushing around from here and there. And so we have this big challenge. And basically, we have seen many people asking this question now: how do we actually make sure that our digital identity that is struggling to, I mean, not struggling, it's spreaded everywhere during this COVID era, how are we going to secure it? So from that point of view, I would like to go back to Ms. Baratang Mia again to ask you this question, that how do you think, on your views, how do you think individuals and every one of us can be able to secure our digital identities during this particular age of coronavirus or COVID-19?
At the moment, traditionally, as Prof had said, the culture of digital identity, we still use fingerprints, your iris, face, voice, and a lot of AI to secure the identity of a person. And most of these are designed by engineers who really still have a lot of biases around what they are designing and who they are designing for. So I would say, in terms of trust of systems, I have to start there because it's my passion to say, as Africans, we need to get more of ourselves identified. I'm going to use an example. I use Siri a lot. And when I started using Siri maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Siri couldn't understand me. But nowadays, if I just talk to Siri with my African accent, she just understands everything I do. Now, how do people protect themselves from systems that are designed externally? So I went to a conference, and when I got to a conference, everything that I had to do, I didn't have to ask anything. For me to register for the conference, I had to allow them to take my fingerprint, my face when I walked in the systems, and all this data was collected. Now I can't question it because I want to attend the conference, or else if I don't allow and give access to that data, I don't have access to the conference. And such things, I think at the moment, still put users at a difficult situation in terms of consent, because for you have to consent for you to access the use of internet, and that places a lot of responsibility on the producers of tech. We can have end user education where we acknowledge that there's a lot of cybersecurity systems and there's strong protection. And you, as an individual, you need to follow best practices. You know, when you click online, what do they mean? And the attachments that you get from work, your emails, your everything, you make sure that there's no malware, there's no malicious suspicion software. As an individual, you protect yourself and you make sure that whoever you give your information to is really in the good hands. Like if you give it to the bank, you must make sure that you sign a consent that they cannot give it to anyone else. So I think just to summarize, protection, as me as an individual, I can only play a certain role of making sure that whoever I give my information to, I give it with consent, trust, and they don't give it to anyone unless I say so. But at the moment, with the softwares that's been designed externally and taking our data, there should be a balance to make sure that they protect my data. So it's a two-way stream.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mia, for that good explanation. We do have a lot of ways that we can utilize to make sure that we secure our digital identity. But most of all, I think I've been talking a lot about this, that we call upon people to do the best they can, not to share a lot, especially when you are using these social media platforms. You're using these different other tools that they can support you achieving your objectives of either receiving service or providing service. Not to share a lot of personal details that they can jeopardize or they can infringe your privacy, and or they can put your privacy at risk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Once you reminding me that I think we also need to educate our youth, because they are the biggest adopters of social media. That now whatever you put it out there, it's there. It's on the internet, and how do we make sure that their digital identity is protected in future? Because now when you apply for a job, the first thing that companies do now, they will go online and check, what are you busy with? What are you doing? What kind of a person are you? Even though they're not allowed to, but most companies are now beginning to do it. So I think we now need to include education in schools about cyber education right from the beginning. When you start, learn what are you putting out there, and what is it going to mean for me as I build my digital footprint.
Thank you very much, Miss Mia. Actually, that's a very good thing. So we are talking about the story of awareness, making sure that we keep our people with awareness trainings to make sure that they are aware, because awareness is one of the key important things to protect ourselves from different sort of attack. I've seen Tola Sefgan has joined us now. My good friend from Nigeria, who is also the BC for AfICTA West region. Welcome, Tola, CEO of Axiom Consulting. Welcome.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Kilio.
Yes, and I hope we'll be able to see you. Also, people are eager to gaze upon you via video. I saw you briefly, then you get off. I believe you can get back on, because the next question comes to you.
Okay, actually, I've been down to Malaya.
Okay. So I want to bring this question to you, my brother Tola. You know, there is a lot of things going on. Currently, people are shutting down their business. Previously, we have seen a lot of business has end up shutting down because of this COVID era, and many people started now thinking of, for example, now we are doing the Zooming. We are communicating from through Zoom from everywhere, because we cannot meet in one places due to COVID. Also, people start working remotely, start working online, trying to improve services through online and so on, to make sure that they still achieve their objectives, but at the same time, trying to protect themselves from getting this particular challenge of COVID-19. So my question is, what are the ways that to be more digitally prepared for future shutdown contingencies?
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I hope I'm heard. Can I be heard? Even though I can be seen, I hope people can hear me. Yusuf, I hope I can be heard.
To hear you properly.
Okay, can you hear me? I
yes.
have cold, so
Okay, no, get well soon, my brother.
Okay, so, but I hope I'm clear enough.
Okay.
But can I be heard? I hope I don't know if I'm, because of my cold, I don't know if I'm heard or I'm not heard. I don't know if can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can proceed.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Well, before COVID, we know that for several years, organizations have always been using VPN technology to enable remote access to data and applications. So the only thing that happened after COVID, because of restrictions of movement, because of social distancing, lockdown, this requires request for VPN technologies increase. And of course, for so many of us in AfICTA, for example, we know that we have been using Zoom before COVID made it popular last year. So we've been making use of it for our However, your question is, how do we prepare ourselves for the next likelihood of pandemic or any other thing that can disrupt human face-to-face gathering and rely on VPN? One of the things that has come out during COVID is for us realizing that there are solutions such as cloud, like we have CSB, Cloud Access Security Broker, that it's been there. Also, I had Professor mention something. Zero trust network access. Network.
Tola, you're breaking up. I'm not sure. Is it a network connection? I think we are having a lot of challenges from your end.
So that's why I was asking if I was hard. Because of my code, I could just be hearing myself echo. But am I hard?
Yeah, we can hear you now, but previously you keep on breaking.
Okay,
I don't know.
Yeah. Because of the cold, I'm hearing echo in my head, so I don't know whether the voice is coming out or not. Okay, I was saying in the initial presentation, Professor made mention of zero trust network access, and one of the things we need to start getting ready is to get used to our ZTNA, that is zero trust network access, and this cloud access security broker. Now, I haven't done that. I'll say four things that we need to take a look at. Number one, we need to know the requirement of the network we will put in place before the next lockdown comes up. What are the networks? We ask questions. What are the users and what is their likely function when they connect to our network? What kind of device will be used and who will be owning these devices? We look at something, the application and our data that users will be using, because we need to know our area. Are we having enough accessibility to the internet? Do we have devices that people can use? Are people having enough mobile technology that they can use to connect over the available tool that will be used in case there's any lockdown? Then, of course, we need to take a look. I had when Mayor said something about going to a network, making use of Siri, asking them, surrendering your digital identity because you want to be part of a conference. So we need to know as well, where are we attending conferences? Where are we connected to? For example, these Zoom services we're making use of. When I was connecting, I saw it says we are being serviced by servers in Germany. Okay, so those are the things we need to now start getting ready for. That I repeat it again. What are the users? What functions are they? Those that will be connected. What kind of devices are being used? What kind of application or data do you want to get access to? If you're able to determine that, then we start getting into remote access solution that we need to use. One, what connection requirements do we require? Okay, we need to know the requirements that they demand. I remember I'm a student, I'm attending a class one day, and the two lecturers, one was using Google Meet, and another lecturer was using Zoom. And after the Zoom session, my co-students screamed that Zoom was consuming too much of data, that they preferred Google Meet. So what I imply is that many of us that will be connecting, we need to get used to some of these tools and know what requirements are available on each of them. Another thing I think we take a look at is determining the user cases, the use cases for whatever we want to use for remote access product that we want to use. Do we need Zoom? Do we need Jitsi, which is a bit cheaper? Do we need Google Meet? Do we need Microsoft Teams and all that? And lastly, before I leave, we need to determine security requirements. Because at the end of the day, a lot of digital identity will be lost. A lot of cases have been reported during pandemic because a lot of people are using the internet more now. So we have more cyber security challenges, where we have challenges with confidentiality, the integrity of data, and of course, authenticity of data. So to that extent, we need to know the kind of security requirements that will be required. With that, we can say freely we are virtualizing our processes, then we're ready for the next possible pandemic. I don't know if thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Mr. Tola, before you go, I can see you have a very good idea of what is currently troubling us. But so on your view, what do you think is the state of digital identity security currently during this COVID era?
Well, as just like my previous speaker said, the major challenge for us now is that you are willing.
I think we lost you.
Surrendering your digital identity. We advise minimize your exposure on the internet, but there is a lot of things that you want to do that you have no choice, that you have to release your digital identity. The thing that we need to now begin to increase awareness on is risk assessment. For every little thing, we need to value the cost-benefits ratio of whatever we want to do online for us to surrender our digital identity. What is the risk associated with this particular, like I'm attending this conference, I'm a vice chairman of AfICTA. I have a lot of stake in AfICTA. So if I'm connecting to AfICTA program and I'm releasing my digital identity, I need to value I need to measure my risk. The very first step of cybersecurity is risk assessment. You measure this risk associated, and if you're able to get the risk, the vulnerability and threats associated with that particular digital project, then we can know whether it is worth going into it. And when it's worth going into it, I need to now build my threat defense mechanism such that my digital identity is as safe as I can make it. But of course, we know, no matter how your strength in terms of building defense mechanism could be the beginning of what intruders or on access control, on access accessory can have, because their knowledge is not as limited as what I may have. But I need to take the first precaution. The first precaution is for me to assess my risk and know what threat of vulnerability is available before I can now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Tola. One thing that we need to understand when it comes to every sort of attack, the threats that we currently have, is to invest a lot on what we call cybersecurity awareness, making sure that people are aware of the challenges ahead of us, the risks that we can encounter, and how do we get away from those risks. And apart from that, we also need to have strong policies in place, security policies that will address these agenda or these issues or challenges and see how we can fix them through these security policies. Because having that, we'll be able to give people directives, to give people high-level statements on do's and don'ts as they make use of our critical infrastructure within our organization. Now, my question goes to Professor Sharif Al-Qassas. On your view, Prof, what are the policies that we need to look at during this COVID era and the post-COVID era?
Thank you for your very important question, and to all the colleagues for the really valuable remarks. The policy question, like you yourself had put it earlier on, is really an assessment and an understanding of our true security requirements. So when you ask what's the most important policy that should be in place, again, we have to bring it back to the context and assets we're trying to protect. If we're dealing with a self-driving autonomous vehicle, for example, then obviously the most important policies would be linked to those catering for safety. For example, an external attacker breaking into an autonomous vehicle could cause terrible damage to happen. Similarly with medical equipment. For example, we've seen lots of medical devices that are computer driven with flaws in them, with obviously devastating effects that might take place if compromised. So not to generalize too much, but if we look at specific industries, we're going to see emerging standards for each one of those industries that tries to place security requirements that are important for an industry. So the payment card industry, like I might have mentioned earlier, has now established the so-called Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, which lays the priorities for this particular industry. You're going to see similar standards emerging for smart grids, for embedded systems, and for others. So it's hard to generalize it and offer a single list of policies, but you have to look at the context, so to speak. But if I may add one other remark to what my fellow panelists had said, again, back to identity management in general, we're seeing a shift in how we're dealing with identity management, precisely for the reasons you had all mentioned, that we're oversharing and we're surrendering too much of our credentials to single entities. So rather than having centralized sources of identities, so depending on a single system that provides us with authentication, authorization, and so forth, we've moved from that into federated, and now we see the theme of so-called self-sovereign identity. It's essentially that the user gets to control how aspects of their identity or attributes of their identity are actually used. And folks promoting self-sovereign identity would often cite an example, like if you want to go and rent a car, for example, then you have to share certain aspects, like your age, for example, that you're eligible, or your driving credentials that you're actually able to drive. But you don't necessarily have to share other aspects of your identity, like other aspects like your medical records, for example, are not necessarily part of this particular equation. So we're seeing a shift in that direction. But back to your point, to enforce it, we have to have regulation and policies in place to make it feasible and enforceable for vendors to accept such practices. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. El-Kassas. Thank you very much for that. Actually, I actually also speak about what we call, we have seen a massive number of organizations allowing people to make use of their own devices. BYOD, you bring your own devices, make use of your own devices, create your own devices. I think this is one also of the area where we need to put a lot of good policies to make sure that people, for example, they don't use their own devices at the same time trying to download malicious applications that they can put our organization in troubles. Sometimes they do many challenges when it comes to those devices, because the devices are not they're their own. So they do many things with those devices, downloading different applications, using weak Wi-Fi devices on their homes, and they access our critical infrastructure within organizations. So all those areas, I think that we need to have good policies that they can address these issues, so that we'll be able to get away from different challenges coming along with this COVID era period. Also, we do have the bigger problem with passwords. We have seen people are making use of passwords that are easily targeted by cyber criminals, causing problems to our organization, causing problems to different places, our accounts, and so on. So we do have, we've been having a lot of discussions on how we can move along and change this scenario of having this password that they can bring troubles to our organization. So my question goes to Ms. Mia from South Africa. I want you at least to share with us your views and knowledge on the processes that we can towards replacing passwords, so that we can start going through making use of new other authentication or factors of authentication that we can start increasing or protecting our critical infrastructure in a better way. So what are the processes towards replacing passwords, Ms. Mia?
I think passwords can still work. Nowadays, they've got this verified sequence that they insist on us using. And systems like, I know Google now has started saying you are overusing your password if you use the same password over and over again. And now, if we can just get our people to understand that the verified sequence of passwords and the suggested passwords that comes with the systems are more secured than using something that you can remember. Because what we find is that people use trust. People use what they know, what they can remember, and that's what put us at vulnerability, because people can understand it. I think now with the iris, the fingerprint, face, and the voice that AI has started using to replace our passwords. I mean, with our phones now, you just put a finger and then it knows who you are, or it looks at your eyes and identify you. Those can replace passwords better. I'm not one to say to advocate for that to be the leading, though it's still the best option, the leading in terms of verifying passwords, because we still know that there still needs to be a fine-tuning of these systems in terms of identifying ourselves. I think also if we can get our people, I thought of it now when you were talking, that we need to get our people to understand that they need to keep their devices updated all the time. Like if a new software comes in, update the software, because it will pick up all the malwares and everything that comes with that. So that goes with passwords. If you're using a very old version of passwords and there's a new attack that's going on, it's easy for people who are trying to attack your systems, even if it's a malware, to guess what kind of a password would the people in the organizations use.
Thank you very much. So I think, as you have said, we need to start thinking of two factors of authentication. For example, using the OTPs, using those second factor authentication to make sure. And good thing now, most of these applications, they've already authorized us to make use of this second factor authentication, the third factor authentication, and so on and so on, using our OTPs or what we have, and also the story of fingerprints, etc., etc. So we need to embrace these new changes in technology so that at least we will not rely only upon passwords, because someone can crack these passwords. Someone can get them through different techniques, like, for example, brute force attack. We have things like dictionary attack. So we have all these kind of techniques. People, they can guess our password. So password someone can get in one way or another. So we need to embrace the second factor of authentication, third factor of authentication, as you put it, that we also, when you utilize password, also we must make sure that we don't really use something that someone else can easily guess based on maybe our interest and so on and so on. Now I'm going back to Prof before I go to Brother Tola. I know you're not feeling well, so I'm trying to not to ask you a lot of questions during this panel session.
Okay. But before you go, let me just add one or two things.
Okay.
Maybe I can say a few things to what Mia said, or maybe after Prof speaks. Okay.
I don't hear you.
I was saying that I wanted to add a few words to what Mia said, but I'll wait until after Prof speaks.
Okay, not a problem. Now I want to ask Mr. Professor Sharif. what are the fundamental recommendations from the Better Identity Coalition?
Thank you very much for your question, and thanks for everybody for their really valuable remarks. And sorry to take a step back and just get to the password and authentication theme in general. Well, of course, it might seem humorous, but there are a few folks on the internet that publish a list of the most popular passwords in the world. And the most popular password in the world is, of course, a trivial one. It's the numbers 1 through 6. So, you know, obviously, you don't want that to be your password in the system, because that's what attackers are going to start using. And that's what's going to be in every attacker's dictionary to try to break into your passwords. Of course, there are lots of valuable themes. Ms. Mea mentioned some really important ones, like biometrics, fingerprints, retina scans, and the likes. But of course, I'm sure we all agree that there are no silver bullets here. There is no one solution that fits all. So even though biometrics are a really much better authentication mechanism than passwords for the reasons mentioned by many, but also they have some drawbacks. For example, you can't revoke your biometrics. So if I lose my password, if I lose my encryption key, I can ask for a new one. But if somebody copies my fingerprint, I can't change my fingerprint as a result. And I only have 10 of those, so it becomes a depletable resource. So we have to balance the risk of using those depletable resources versus the benefit of using them. So personally, I wouldn't use my fingerprint to log into my email account, but I might use my fingerprint to open the data center room at which I might work, for example. So again, risk management becomes a big part of this particular issue. And many of you also mentioned multi-factor authentication and cryptographic-based authentication. All are really great ideas, but again, the issue of trust seeps in. So we've seen lots of authentication happen via SMS messages, relying on the integrity of mobile operators properly delivering this second or third factor of authentication. And if you look it up, you're going to see lots of attacks that are based on so-called SIM swapping, essentially some fraudster convincing the phone company that they are somebody else, stealing the identity, and convincing the phone company to issue a new SIM card associated with an existing phone number, and therefore enabling the redirection of the authentication SMS messages to their phone as opposed to yours. So again, unfortunately, no silver bullets there are no magical solutions, but everything has to be risk assessed and scrutinized to make sure that we are in the right direction. But I think the minimal we need to do is to adopt this concept of multi-factor authentication and identity proofs, because passwords, valuable as they are I think, at the losing edge of authentication mechanism, essentially because we as humans are not very good at making up good passwords and remembering them. And when the passwords are too complicated, we tend to write them down, which again makes things much worse. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I was looking at my watch here. I find the time is really running out very quickly. Probably couldn't recognize, and unfortunately, also we start a bit late. So let me before going to Tola, please Tola reserve your comments. But before going to Tola, I want to ask Dada. I hope Dada you are there. Either Dada or Coyote, either of the two?
Yes, we're here, sir.
Okay. So I believe there are some questions that was posted on our Q&A session. Can you help us read those questions so that we can be able to see how we can respond to them?
Well, currently we don't have any questions for the speakers. We just posted on the group chat that anybody has any questions can just signify by posting on the Q&A chat room.
Yes, there is a Q&A session. A pass there that you can post questions, and also we can. Is it possible we can allow someone to ask questions via to talk while asking question? Is it possible?
Come again. I didn't get that.
Can we? Someone can ask question as they speak. Is it possible?
I think if anyone has any question, you can just raise your hand so that we can allow you to speak.
Okay. Please raise your hand if you want to speak. And then our secretariat will give you permission to ask questions. Because I see the time is not in our hand, we want to try to wind up quickly. Any question from your participants?
Yeah, we do have a question, a hand raised from Dr. Jameson Olufuye. I think you can go ahead and speak, sir.
Okay.
Hi, everyone, and greetings from Abuja. It's been a very, very enlightening discussion, and thanks to Professor Casas, Biral, and all the speakers, Tola, for the interventions, and the moderator, Kilio, thank you for doing a great job. And our condolences on the transition of your highly beloved president.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, the discussion has been, been very fluid. And let me also really thank the chairman, the vice chair, AfICTA for East Africa, Dr. Audo, for setting the pace to start with this webinar. Yes, this discussion is very, very relevant, because everything has moved onto the cloud. And I quite agree with all the measures proposed in terms of how to prepare for the possibility of the next pandemic, and also how to maintain a safe identity right in the cloud, and how to mitigate those challenges. But what I want to say is that really anything on the internet has nothing like say safety. The moment you are connected, the moment you are connected, there is an interference. The moment you are connected, it surely means that you are already exposed, however it is. So the only way out is that you are not connected at all. But if you are not connected at all, then you will not be fulfilling the promise of the digital age, which AfICTA represents. So we want everybody to connect, but we also want everybody to know that, well, the risks are there and we can mitigate it. One of such other approaches is what is prevalent in Nigeria in some cases is that people use stolen SIM card, and then they use that to defraud people of the assets in banks and what have you. So what we could also say is that, all right, you need to provide a code to your SIM card. Usually people don't attach security or passcode to their SIM card. So this needs to be done. And then, and of course, well, the GDPR is helping. Professor Kesa talked about that, and also Kilio. GDPR is helping to maintain some level of protection or privacy for individual credentials. But since risk level has gone high, Facebook recently reported there are so many phishing attacks. So also Google brand. People capitalizing on their brand to defraud people. So their challenge is prosecution. How do you get people prosecuted? You want to investigate the situation, you cannot access the UIs, to properly investigate. So abuse, how do you mitigate the abuse, in the system as well? So it's quite a challenge investigating it and prosecuting it across borders. So those are the other things we need to look at. How do we ensure that even in Africa, we collaborate so that criminals can easily be prosecuted? Because there has to be scapegoats. There has to be prosecution to deter, bad players. Otherwise, why not? In our villages, we know ourselves. In our villages, we are supposed to be transparent. Okay, so the world is a global village. We are supposed to relate with each other. We're able to do transactions freely, but for the criminals. So if the criminals show up, we need to be able to prosecute them. And I think one of our takeaways is that we should be able to encourage more collaboration and among governments and stakeholders. And then access to WIS should be easy. We know ICANN is working on making that easy now, especially to be in compliance with GDPR and other privacy and data protection regulation. So all in all, the risk factor is there. And once we are there online, we should know that nothing is really sacred and nothing is really secured 100%. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chimson Olufe. You're one of my very good friends who puts a lot of effort on making sure that our cyberspace also is secured. You're being putting a lot of energies. I've seen a lot of initiative. You contributed a lot in the field of cybersecurity, which I'm also very grateful for that. And the points that you spoke are very, very useful. I think we need to consider those agenda very, very well. Well, as I'm winding up on this particular panel discussion because of our timing, I want to start with Tola. Tola, you can give us a short, brief remark on final remarks from your end. And as you speak on your final remark, I want also to help us understand, is it always, is always on VPN still right access choice, or we have new technologies?
All right. Thank you, Kelio, and for the wonderful moderation. And apologies, my video is not on because of my cold. Okay. Before we go into all this on VPN, let me quickly. There's a document that was released on March 7th. Internet Crime Complaint Center, FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center, and it's in the case that. From 2019 to 2020, there are increased 300,000 incidences that occurrence on the internet, which means COVID increased the challenges of online cybercrime. Okay, so what that implies is, yes, earlier we talked about authentication, but we know that the weakest link in any security model is usually the human link. So whether we are going to what am I saying? The authentication, if you are looking for alternatives or not, we know as well, before we talk about always on VPN, yes, there are new technologies coming on, but I want to emphasize that for Africa in particular, we need a lot of sensitization. We need a lot of collaboration to create awareness. The popular language in cybersecurity is in finding your password, whether it is always VPN on or we want to look at authentication. First, we need to ask the three things that we talk about is what we know, or what we have, or who you are. Now, the most common one, which all of us know, is the password, is what you are. So everybody uses password. The alternative to those ones are what you have and who you are. Facial recognition, biometrics, fingerprint. Even fingerprint is having issues these days because people think, what if someone dies and the thumb is cut and is used for access, or there's 3D printing and things like that. So on a final note, to go to your question in particular about VP, right? Remote access VP, always
Yes, VPN.
on. Yeah, VPN. Yes, the new technology, always on VPs are being used for all of users' connection and resource consumption. Even when some users need, they only need access to cloud-based applications and data. So yes, but my recommendation would be to always evaluate the risk of enabling unknown devices previously not used in the organization. So yeah, I know that there's some organization they use bring your own PC connection. So let's develop a usable remote network policy that we all been agreed with us stakeholders, so that it will minimize the challenges that will come with digital identity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tola, for that winding up remark. I would like to go to Miss Mia. I hope Miss Mia, you're with us. I think Miss Mia, she's getting prepared. As we wait for Miss Mia to get ready, let me go to Prof. Miss Mia, you're ready?
Sorry, I'm with you. I muted myself. You were saying?
Oh, okay, yes, I can hear you now and I can see you clearly. So your final remarks, any final thoughts on the subject?
Yes. My final remark would be that cybersecurity or threat doesn't discriminate. It's the same as COVID, HIV/AIDS. It attacks anyone, anywhere, corporates, individuals, and we all have to educate ourselves. We all have to come together. As one of the comments was that Africans, we need to collaborate and start building stronger systems and protect ourselves against, there are those petty crimes, cyber crimes, where people post other people's information without consent on social media, like a girl and a boy. And then those matures to cyber attacks where our information is shared for voting and to benefit corporates. And then we have, I think what we haven't addressed more is these cyber terrorism, where countries and us, especially Africans, we've been targeted, or anywhere these are big attacks that are designed to put fear, and systems are designed that will put fear in us as people to not trust the internet. So I think we need to, awareness is the biggest thing that needs to follow in terms of educating our people and making sure that corporates also build policies and countries build policies, because this is not exclusive, it's attacking everyone. And in closure, I would say that I signed the Paris call. I'm not promoting it, but there are ways where countries are coming together to talk about security at a bigger scale. I know the Paris call was done before, just after the attack in Paris. We need something where we will have a collaboration, maybe an African one, where as Africans, what do we talk about when you talk about privacy? What are we talking about when we talk about culture of the internet and what's coming out here? And how do we make sure that our own people are protected, especially with AI that is still very, very dangerous towards African people?
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to Prof. Sharif. Your final thoughts and remarks?
Thank you very much. I think my fellow panelists have stolen the show, so to speak, because I would agree with them completely that the African collaboration theme is a really very important one. On setting standards, certainly on AI applications and use for sure, but also for content-wide collaboration with dealing with incidents and collaborating on solving them, of course, and also setting privacy rules, standards, and enabling us all to reap the benefits of this connected world, and hopefully while trying to minimize the risks we might face. And I think we can only do that via our own collaboration and looking at what others have done, state of the art, look at the European Union and so forth, and learn from that and build our own equivalent standards and work towards enforcing them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We do need to have a group photo where I will ask everyone to switch on their webcam so that we can be able to do a group photo. And then later on, I'll request if there is any question that was raised, and if not, then we will request the chair of AfICTA to provide his closing remark, which I believe he is online with us. Is it not correct, Dada? I believe
Yes,
he's online.
I believe he's online with us.
Yeah. Okay, good. So now, if you allow me, let us first get the group photo where we turn on our video cam, and then for publication and put it online and so on and so on. So let us start with group photo. Are we ready? I hope everyone can put on their camera on. Once you finish doing the group photo, you can alert us. Dada, we are waiting for your information. Have you finished with the group photo?
Yes, taking. You can go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let me go to our chair, my very good friend, Mr. Thabo Mashegwane, also from South Africa, who is also a president of TPSA in South Africa. And recently, I've seen on the news there is a very good work ongoing to that particular association for there in South Africa, which I would like also to congratulate you for that. So now the ball is you, sir, for your final closing remarks.
Chair, you need to unmute. Please unmute.
Sorry for that. Thank you very much, Yusuf Kilio. Much appreciated for that. I think this was a great session that had got lots of insight for us as people who attended it on having insider risks, insights on securing our identity. Thank you for this, and thanks for the leadership. Dr. Waido, thanks a lot for arranging with the team. And I think when you look at this topic, it's a very critical topic, and the panel members as well as the presenters, they actually analyzed this particular topic in a way that even commoners can be able to comprehend it. And when I look at the takeaways, big takeaway that came out is awareness. Very, very much critical that as you have everybody moving into this space, you get a scenario where even the novices of technology. People who have never touched technology before, they come in excited into the space and they don't know what they're coming into. So even us who are in the real world, you can be called an adult. However, you find that you are still an infant in the space. And we all know you can't just get an infant, let the infant go to town by themselves to go and shop in a mall. You cannot do that. You have to take some parental responsibility and make sure that they are secured. But the unfortunate thing is that in the digital world, that is not necessarily the case. And if you have seen post-COVID-19, we have had lots and lots of people who most probably never ever dreamt of being online, but now they've got online identity, they are using online services, they are buying food online, they are exposing not only their identity, but also their financial information online. And I would like to actually extend my high gratitude to the panelists and also the presenters for joining us with this insight and actually giving us a better view of the subject on what we ought to do and what we ought to look out for when one is venturing into this world, or if I can say the jungle, the cyber. It's very much what you have done for us. And I think when one looks at also the challenge, we links very much to the center of the message I got from the session. How will we transition all these digital systems we've got, and especially in particular in our continent itself, how will we be able to actually transition them into this new world of but just ensuring that they treat the digital world in the very same manner in which they treat the physical world. And in actual fact, with more caution, because you actually do not meet in person people who might be attacking you when you are in the digital world. At least physically, if there's any harm that happens to you, it would have been on contact. So it would have been something that you would have seen, or that something that would have come directly to you. But in the digital world, you have someone sitting miles away, kilometers away from you. You don't know them. You are not aware of them, but they still attack you. So much appreciated for what you have presented, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you as AfICTA for your participation and your input into this. Keep on doing the great work for Africa, our continent. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thabo. We really appreciate your excellent closing remark. I think we have reached an end of our session or webinar, and we believe we are going to have the second webinar that will be done by other region. The first session, the first quarter was done from eastern part of Africa, led by Professor Dr. Waudo Siganga, the Vice Chair for AfICTA. And after that, we are going to have another region that will take over. I'm not sure which region, but I believe some other region will be able to take over. So basically, we look forward for the next session discussing different other good stuff. From my end, allow me to thank you everyone for being a part of this webinar, and we look forward to meet you again on other webinar. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a very lovely afternoon.
Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.